The massive alien ship floated silently above Earth, like a silver cathedral in the void. Its crystalline hull caught the sunlight and scattered it into rainbow patterns that danced across its surface. Inside the ship's bridge, Ambassador Veltar pressed his face against the viewing port, staring down at the blue and green world below. His tentacles twisted nervously around each other as he watched the primitive satellites drift past. These crude metal boxes looked like children's toys compared to the elegant energy constructs his people built. But desperation had brought him here to this backwater planet, and desperation made even the impossible seem worth trying. "Are you really sure about this?" Captain Mordain asked from behind him. The captain's crystalline skin reflected the Earth's light in sharp angles, making him look like a living diamond. These humans barely know how to leave their own atmosphere. Their technology is thousands of years behind ours. Veltar's large eyes closed for a moment. When he opened them again, they were filled with exhaustion and fear. "We have tried everything. Else, my friend, everything. The Void Swarm has eaten 7 of our worlds. 7 entire star systems gone. Billions of our people consumed by those nightmare creatures." He turned away from the window and walked to the center of the bridge. Around him, holographic displays showed the terrible truth.
Red markers indicated
Dead worlds, their surfaces covered in writhing biomechanical growths. The Void Swarm had appeared from deep space 5 years ago, and nothing could stop them. "Our best plasma cannons barely scratched their holes," Veltar continued, his voice growing quieter. "Our photon lances, our energy shields, our quantum disruptors, nothing works. These creatures adapt to everything we throw at them. They eat energy weapons and grow stronger." Captain Mordain nodded sadly. He had been there when Altair Prime fell. He had watched from orbit as the beautiful crystal cities of his people were consumed by the growing biomechanical cancer that covered the planet like a disease. The screams of billions still echoed in his dreams. "The Vega system has maybe 2 cycles left," Veltar said, staring at the tactical displays. "After that, the swarm will reach our core worlds. The coalition will cease to exist." The bridge fell silent, except for the soft humming of the ship's systems. Outside, Earth continued its slow rotation, unaware that the fate of an entire galactic civilization might depend on its primitive inhabitants. "Send the transmission," Veltar ordered finally. "Tell them we need light, pure concentrated light to burn away the darkness that devours our worlds." The communications officer, a young Altarian named Keshva, worked at her console with practiced efficiency. Her people had been engineers and scientists for millennia, masters of elegant technology that could reshape matter with focused thought. Now she was reduced to sending desperate messages to aliens who still used chemical rockets. "Message prepared, Ambassador," she said softly, transmitting on all human frequencies. The message streaked toward Earth's surface, carried by quantum entanglement communications that the humans would not understand for centuries. It was a simple plea from a dying civilization. "We are the Kepler Coalition. We come in peace, seeking aid. Our worlds die in darkness. We need your help to create light, energy weapons, plasma technology, anything that burns bright enough to push back the void." For 3 days, they waited. The alien ship maintained its position above Earth, hidden from human detection by advanced cloaking technology. Veltar paced the bridge constantly, his tentacles leaving nervous marks on the crystal floors. Every hour brought news of fresh disasters from the front lines. The Void Swarm was accelerating its advance. Then, on the 3rd day, the response came. "Incoming transmission from the planet's surface," Keshva announced. "Source appears to be from a place called Seoul, in the Korean Peninsula region." The main view screen flickered to life, showing a middle-aged human man in a simple suit. He had kind eyes and graying hair, and he spoke with the calm authority of someone accustomed to handling crises. "This is Hyen Woo Kim," the human said, Earth's newly appointed Director of Extraterrestrial Affairs. "We have received your message and studied your situation as best we can with our limited technology." Veltar stepped forward, his translator, working to convert his words into the human language. "Director Kim, we are grateful for your response. Our civilization faces extinction. We need weapons that can penetrate biomechanical armor that absorbs energy attacks. The human nodded thoughtfully. We understand your predicament. While our technology may seem primitive to you, we have developed certain approaches to combat. That might prove useful. We are prepared to help. You have weapons that could work? Veltar asked, hope creeping into his voice for the first time in months. We have specialists who excel at creating light, Kim replied with a slight smile. Very bright light, very hot light. We're sending our best people to assist with your lighting problem. Veltar's relief was so overwhelming that his tentacles went limp. Finally, after all the desperate searching, after all the failed attempts to find a solution, there was hope. These primitive humans claimed they could help create the light needed to push back the darkness. As the transmission ended, Veltar looked around the bridge at his crew. The first time in months, he saw something other than despair in their eyes. They had found allies in the most unlikely place, and perhaps that would be enough to save their worlds. Dr. Jihai Park walked into the Coalition Council chamber with steady steps, her black hair tied back in a simple ponytail. The room was enormous, with curved walls that seemed to be made of living crystal. Soft blue light emanated from every surface, creating an atmosphere that felt both beautiful and alien. Around the circular table sat representatives from 7 different alien species. Their forms varied wildly. Some had tentacles, others had crystalline skin that caught the light. A few looked like walking trees with silver bark. Despite their differences, they all shared the same expression of desperate hope as they looked at the human woman. Ambassador Veltar rose from his seat, his tentacles curling with nervous energy. Dr. Park, thank you for coming so far to help us. We are truly grateful that Earth has answered our call. Jihai bowed slightly, a gesture of respect she had learned from her grandmother. We received your message about needing light to fight these creatures. We want to help however we can. She walked to the center of the room, where a holographic display showed the enemy they faced. The Void Swarm bioships floated in the projection like living nightmares. Their hulls pulsed with organic rhythms, covered in what looked like scales, or armor plating that seemed to shift and move on its own. These creatures have consumed 7 of our worlds, Veltar explained, his voice heavy with sadness. Our most powerful plasma cannons barely scratch their surface. Our photon lances simply bounce off their hulls. We need something stronger, something that can burn through their defenses. Gi studied the holographic ships carefully, walking around them to see every angle. Her scientific mind was already working, analyzing what she saw. These bioships adapt to energy attacks, don't they? Absorb the energy and use it to strengthen themselves. Exactly, Captain Mordain confirmed. The more energy we throw at them, the stronger they become. It's like they were designed to counter our weapons. Jihai nodded thoughtfully, then turned to gesture toward the chamber entrance. I brought someone who might have answers. This is Colonel Donghen Li, our military specialist. He has spent the last week studying your weapon data. The man who entered the chamber was tall and stern-faced, wearing a crisp military uniform. His eyes were sharp and calculating as he looked at the alien representatives. Unlike Jihai's gentle demeanor, the colonel carried himself with the confidence of someone who had seen many battles. Colonel Li has reviewed all your weapon specifications, Jihai continued. He has some interesting observations about your approach to warfare. Colonel Li stepped forward and studied the holographic bioships with professional interest. Your energy weapons are very impressive, he said slowly. It's very clean, very precise, very elegant. But that's exactly the problem. The aliens exchanged confused glances. They had spent thousands of years perfecting their energy-based weapons, creating tools of war that were both beautiful and deadly. How could elegance be a problem? These creatures have evolved specifically to counter your type of warfare, the colonel explained. They're like living shields designed to absorb and redirect energy attacks. Your weapons are too clean, too focused. These organisms just adapt and overcome. Captain Mordain leaned forward in his crystalline chair. Then what do you suggest? How do we fight something that adapts to our weapons? Colonel Li's expression grew serious. Humans think very differently about warfare. Where you see the need for elegant energy solutions, we see the need for something more direct. We use kinetic impact, explosive force, and what we call overwhelming firepower. The alien council members looked at each other with blank expressions. These terms were completely foreign to them. Their language had no words for such concepts because they had never developed weapons based on crude physical force. I think it's better if we show you, Jihai said gently. Colonel Lee, would you demonstrate? The colonel pulled out a small device that looked primitive compared to the alien technology around them. When he activated it, a holographic display changed to show scenes from Earth's recent military exercises. The aliens watched in growing amazement as primitive. Chemical rockets streaked across the sky, leaving trails of fire behind them. Metal projectiles traveled at incredible speeds, punching through armored targets like they were made of paper. Then came the nuclear explosions, blooming like tiny suns and turning everything in their path into superheated plasma. The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of the crystal walls. The alien council members stared at the display with expressions of shock and confusion. This was unlike anything they had ever seen. This is ... One of the council members whispered, his voice barely audible. This is barbaric, so crude and violent. Colonel Lee's expression didn't change. This is effective, he corrected calmly. You asked for light to fight these creatures. We'll give you light, the light of 1,000 explosions. But these are just chemical reactions, Captain Mordain protested. Simple physics. How could such primitive methods succeed where our advanced energy weapons fail? Jihai smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. Because sometimes the simplest solution is the best one. These bioships have evolved to absorb and redirect energy, but they haven't evolved to survive having several tons of metal hitting them at 10,000 meters per second. She walked back to the holographic display and pointed at the nuclear explosions. And they definitely haven't evolved to survive temperatures of 100 million degrees. That's the light we can give you, the light of nuclear fire. The alien council sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had just learned. Their elegant, sophisticated approach to warfare might be completely wrong for this enemy. What they needed was not more sophistication, but less. Chief Engineer Minho Choi stood on the observation deck of the Coalition Fortress world, watching as his team installed the first human weapons on an alien military base. Sweat dripped from his forehead despite the cool air that flowed through the station's climate control systems. The work was exhausting, but he knew how important it was. The fortress world of Kepler 442b was beautiful in its own alien way. Tall. Crystal spires reached toward the purple sky, their surfaces glowing with soft energy that pulsed like a heartbeat. These towers had been built by the Coalition as defensive platforms designed to house their elegant energy weapons. Team was bolting crude metal boxes onto these graceful structures. Careful with that mounting bracket, Minho called to one of his technicians. Those missile pods are heavier than they look. Nearby, a group of alien technicians watched the installation with expressions that mixed fascination and horror. Their blue skin shimmered with distress as they saw the humans attaching what looked like primitive metal containers to their beautiful defensive towers. Technician Yilvan, her large eyes reflecting the purple light from the spires, approached Minho. With obvious confusion, "I don't understand," she said, her voice carrying a musical quality that the translation device couldn't quite capture. "These projectiles of yours. ... They're so crude." "Just metal and chemicals." Minho wiped his hands on a cloth and grinned. At the alien engineer, he had been working with Coalition forces for 2 weeks now, and he was getting used to their reactions to human technology. "I know they don't look like much compared to your plasma cannons," he said, patting the side of a sleek missile casing. "But sometimes crude works better than elegant." Yovan's skin shimmered with deeper shades of blue, indicating her continued distress. "But your weapons have no sophistication, no precision. They're just explosive devices attached to flying machines." "That's exactly right," Minho agreed cheerfully. "Your energy weapons try to burn through the bioholes of these creatures. They try to be smart about it, to find the right frequency or power level. Our missiles don't try to burn through anything. They just hit so hard that physics doesn't give the target a choice." alien technician looked even more confused. Her people had spent thousands of years developing weapons that were both beautiful and deadly. Tools of war that could paint the sky with coherent light. The idea of using brute force instead of elegance was completely foreign to her. But surely precision is better than crude force, she asked. Minho was about to answer when alarms began sounding throughout the fortress. The crystal spires pulsed. With urgent red light and voices speaking in various alien languages filled the air, the universal translator quickly converted them into Korean for the human workers. Alert. Void swarm scouts detected at system edge. All defensive positions prepare for combat. Minho felt his heart rate increase. This would be the first real test of their integrated weapon systems. He quickly activated his communication device to contact the command center. This is Chief Engineer Choi. Human weapons systems are online and ready for combat. The response came from Admiral Sujin Yoon, the Korean military officer who had been appointed as liaison between Earth and coalition forces. Her voice was calm and professional despite the danger approaching. Acknowledged, Chief Engineer. We're tracking 3 Void Swarm bioships approaching from the outer system. Coalition plasma batteries are engaging first. Through the fortress's viewing ports, Minho and the alien technicians could see the battle beginning. Beautiful beams of coherent light streaked across the darkness of space, striking the approaching bioships with devastating precision. Plasma cannons created a light show that was both terrifying and beautiful. But the light show was also completely ineffective. The bioships absorbed the energy attacks and continued their approach, their organic hulls pulsing with alien bioluminescence as they grew stronger from the absorbed power. Coalition weapons are having no effect, Admiral Yoon's voice crackled through the communication system. Human weapons, you are cleared to engage. Minho moved to the weapons control station, his hands steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. He activated the communication system that connected him to all the human weapons batteries on the fortress. All batteries. This is Battery Commander Taehan Jung. Target the lead bioship. Let's show them what light really looks like. His finger hovered over the firing control for a moment. Around him, the alien technicians watched with wide eyes, still unable to believe that these crude human weapons could succeed where their sophisticated energy systems had failed. Minho pressed the button. The missiles launched in perfect synchronization. Streams of fire trailing behind them as their chemical rockets accelerated them toward the bioships. The contrast was stark where the coalition weapons had been elegant beams of light. The human weapons were crude metal cylinders leaving trails of burning fuel. The void swarm creatures tried to adapt, their biohulls shifting and changing as they had done against the energy weapons. But there was nothing to adapt to. The missiles weren't energy that could be absorbed or redirected. They were just raw kinetic force traveling at several kilometers per second. The first bioship simply vanished. One moment it was there, a living nightmare pulsing with alien intelligence. The next moment, it was expanding debris and glowing plasma, torn apart by the nuclear warhead that had struck it. The second ship tried to maneuver, its organic hull twisting as it attempted to avoid the incoming missiles. But 3 missiles struck it simultaneously, their nuclear warheads turning the creature's biohull into superheated gas that expanded outward like a miniature star. The third bioship lasted only seconds longer before it, too was consumed by nuclear fire. The alien technicians stood in stunned silence as the last traces of the Void Swarm scouts faded from their sensors. The space where 3 nightmarish bioships had been was now empty except for rapidly cooling plasma by the void, whispered Yulvan, her blue skin now shimmering with awe instead of distress. They're all ... gone. Minho nodded grimly, his expression serious despite their victory. You wanted light to fight the darkness. Nuclear fire burns at about 100 million degrees. Bright enough for you? Fleet Admiral Juna Suahan stood on the bridge of the massive coalition flagship, her hands gripping the railing as she stared at the tactical display before her. The ship around her was a marvel of alien engineering, with walls that seemed to be made of living crystal and controls that responded to thought as much as touch. But today, all that elegant technology felt fragile compared to what was approaching. On the main screen, 50 enormous bioships moved through space like a plague of living nightmares. Each one was the size of a small moon, their organic hulls pulsing and rippling with alien intelligence. These were not the small scout ships they had fought before. This was the largest Void Swarm fleet in recorded history, and it was heading straight for the Kepler system. Admiral Communications Officer Yoon Shin called from her station. The human fleet reports all systems ready. Every missile battery is loaded and targeting solutions are locked in. Junisio nodded, her expression calm despite the enormous threat approaching. Over the past 6 months, she had learned to work with both human and alien crews. The Coalition. Officers still found human weapons disturbing, but they could not argue with the results. Where their ancestors had spent centuries perfecting elegant energy solutions, these humans had embraced what they called acceptable losses and overwhelming firepower. The communication system crackled to life with the voice of Captain Wu Jin. Kim, commander of the human destroyer, Soul's Pride. Admiral, we're detecting something new. The bioships are developing some kind of energy absorption network. They're linking together to share defensive capabilities. Through the viewports, Junisio could see the enemy fleet more clearly now. Streams of organic material were flowing between the bioships, connecting them in a web of living tissue. Creatures were adapting again, preparing to absorb even more energy attacks than before. A younger officer might have been worried by this development. The Coalition's plasma weapons would be even less effective against a networked defense system. But Junisio had learned to think like the humans she now fought alongside. She smiled grimly as she activated the fleet communication system. All vessels, this is Admiral Han. The enemy is preparing to absorb energy attacks. Therefore, we don't give them energy to absorb. All ships, implement Human Battle Doctrine 77 Alpha. The order spread through the combined fleet like wildfire. Coalition ships moved into formation with human vessels, their elegant crystal hulls gleaming next to the crude metal armor of Earth's warships. It was a sight that would have been impossible to imagine just a year ago. What followed was unlike anything in Coalition military history. Instead of the traditional elegant energy duels between opposing fleets, space suddenly filled with thousands of missiles, kinetic projectiles, and nuclear warheads. The human weapons left trails of fire and smoke as they accelerated toward their targets, creating a deadly fireworks display against the backdrop of stars. The Void Swarm creatures had evolved over millions of years to counter sophisticated energy weapons. Their bioholes could absorb plasma, redirect laser beams, and even feed on the power of photon lances. But they had never encountered anything like what the humans brought to the battlefield, Captain. Haijin Esio stood on the bridge of her missile cruiser, watching the tactical display with professional satisfaction. Her ship, the Busan Thunder, was one of the first human vessels to be integrated with Coalition technology. The combination of human weapons and alien sensors made it incredibly effective. Target down, she announced, as another bioship disappeared. In a flash of nuclear fire, that's Bioship 17, moving to engage Target 18. Around her, the battle continued with mechanical precision. Human missiles struck their targets with devastating effect, while the bioship's adaptive defenses proved useless against simple kinetic force. The creatures tried to maneuver, tried to adapt, but physics gave them no choice when several tons of metal struck them at incredible speeds. The largest bioship, clearly the command vessel for the entire swarm, began to retreat as its smaller companions were systematically destroyed. Its organic hull pulsed with frantic bioluminescence as it tried to coordinate a withdrawal. But Commander Seungmin Park, captain of the human strategic bomber in Chen's Hammer, had been waiting for this moment. His ship carried the most powerful weapon in the human arsenal, a missile that had originally been designed to destroy entire cities on Earth. Admiral, he announced over the communication system, I have one planet-killer missile, armed and ready, requesting permission to demonstrate what we call nuclear diplomacy. Junisio looked at the retreating command ship on her display. This creature had coordinated the destruction of 7 Coalition worlds. Billions of innocent people had died because of its intelligence and hunger. The decision was easy. Permission granted, Commander Park. Show them what happens when they threaten our worlds. The missile that launched from Inchin's hammer was different from the others. Larger, more sophisticated, carrying a 50-megaton nuclear warhead that represented the pinnacle of human destructive capability. It had been designed during Earth's Cold War to destroy entire metropolitan areas, but against the organic horror of the Void Swarm. It served a different purpose. The warhead struck the command bioship and detonated in a flash of nuclear fire. That created a brief, brilliant star. The explosion was so bright that it could be seen from 3 star systems away, a testament to the raw power that humanity had brought to the galaxy. When the light faded and the sensors cleared, the space where the massive bioship had been was empty except for rapidly cooling plasma. The creature that had terrorized the galaxy for years was gone, vaporized by the nuclear fire of human engineering around the battlefield. The remaining bioships seemed to lose coordination. Without their command vessel, they drifted aimlessly until human missiles found them one by one. Within an hour, the largest Void Swarm fleet in recorded history had been completely destroyed. Admiral Han stood quietly on her bridge, watching the last traces of the enemy fleet disappear from her sensors. The battle was over, and the galaxy was safe. The humans had indeed brought light to fight the darkness, just not the kind of light anyone had expected. 6 months had passed since the great battle at Kepler, and Ambassador Veltar stood in a place that had once been the heart of galactic nightmares. The ground beneath his feet was still warm from radiation, glowing faintly with the remnants of nuclear fire that had burned here for weeks. Where once 3 entire planets had been covered with writhing biomechanical structures, now there were only craters filled with melted rock and cooling plasma. The wind carried a strange smell, like burned metal mixed with something organic that had been turned to ash. Veltar's tentacles curled around his breathing apparatus as he walked carefully through the ruins. Every step reminded him of the terrible creatures that had once lived here. Breeding and planning the destruction of civilized worlds, it's finally over, said Dr. Yansu Kim, the human scientist who walked beside him. She was a xenobiologist who had spent months studying the Void Swarm, learning their biology so that humanity could destroy them more effectively. Our deep space sensors have been scanning for weeks. There's no more swarm activity anywhere in the galaxy. The species appears to be completely extinct. Beltar's large eyes closed for a moment and his tentacles drooped with a mixture of exhaustion and relief. For 5 years, his people had lived in constant fear. Every day brought news of another world consumed, another star system fallen to the endless hunger of the swarm. Now, for the first time in years, the galaxy was truly safe. We asked you for light to push back the darkness, Veltar said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of all the losses his people had suffered. When we sent that first message to Earth, I thought you would give us energy weapons, plasma cannons, photon lances, something elegant and precise like our own technology. Oh, Dr. Kim smiled as she gestured toward the glowing craters that stretched to the horizon. We did give you light, she said. Nuclear fusion burns at 100 million degrees. Antimatter reactions create temperatures that can melt planets. Kinetic energy converted to plasma produces light brighter than most stars. Just not the kind of light you expected. They walked in silence for a few minutes, their footsteps echoing in the empty wasteland. Veltar thought about the irony of their situation. His people had developed the most sophisticated energy weapons in the galaxy, tools of war that could paint space with beams of coherent light. Yet it had taken humanity's crude, primitive approach to finally end the threat. Your methods are Veltar paused, searching for the right words in the human language. Inelegant, brutal, primitive. Colonel Hien Ru Li, who had been walking quietly behind them, stepped forward with a slight smile. She was the military officer who had overseen the integration of human weapons into coalition fleets. But effective, she said simply. Spent centuries perfecting precise energy weapons that could slice through steel with surgical precision. We spent centuries perfecting the art of making things explode very, very effectively. As they continued walking, Veltar noticed that coalition engineers were already at work, building something new in this place of destruction. Crystal spires were rising from the radioactive soil, their surfaces designed to capture and reflect light in beautiful patterns. It would be a memorial garden, a place where future generations could remember the war and the price of victory. The Coalition Council met last week, Veltar announced, as they reached a small hill overlooking the construction site. And they've approved the proposal unanimously. Earth will be invited to join the coalition as a full member with special responsibility for military defense. Dr. Kim nodded thoughtfully. We're honored by the invitation, though I think our galactic neighbors might sleep better knowing we're pointing our missiles outward instead of at each other. Veltar's tentacles curled with what humans would recognize. As amusement, your species has a talent for understatement, Dr. Kim. The Council reviewed your military history before making this decision. We were impressed by humanity's dedication to the art of warfare. Colonel Lee laughed quietly. Had plenty of practice. Too much practice, really. But maybe now we can put those skills to better use. As the twin suns began to set over the memorial garden, casting long shadows across the construction site, Veltar reflected on the strange turn of events that had saved his civilization. The Coalition had sought help from what they considered a primitive world, expecting primitive solutions. Instead, they had discovered that humanity's approach to warfare was exactly what the galaxy needed. Where the Coalition had developed elegant energy weapons, humans had perfected the crude art of destruction. Where aliens sought precision and sophistication, humans embraced overwhelming force and acceptable losses. It was barbaric by Coalition standards, but it was also incredibly effective, Veltar said as they watched the construction. Workers installing the memorial crystals, I understand now why your species survived long enough to reach the stars. Most civilizations that develop nuclear weapons destroy themselves within a few generations. But you learn to control that destructive power, to point it outward instead of inward. Dr. Kim looked at the glowing craters around them, where the light of nuclear fire had finally ended the galactic nightmare. We learned that sometimes the best way to protect life is to be very, very good at ending it. As darkness fell over the former swarm cluster, the memorial crystals began to glow with soft light. But Veltar knew that the real light had already been brought to the galaxy.
Oh.
Not the clean, precise light of energy weapons, but the raw burning. Light of controlled destruction. The light of 1,000 suns unleashed in defense of life itself. The darkness had asked for mercy and humanity had given it fire. In that fire, the galaxy had found its salvation, and the Coalition had found its new protectors.